One Piece has been running for over 25 years, and in that time it's given us some of the most layered, terrifying, and genuinely tragic villains in all of anime. Not just obstacles for Luffy to punch through, these are characters with ideologies, trauma, and plans that reshape entire nations. So let's walk through every major villain in the series, starting with the one who made us realize this show wasn't playing around. Arlong Arlong is the moment One Piece stops being a fun little pirate adventure and starts being something that genuinely hurts to watch. And I mean that as a compliment. Before we get into it, this video is walking through every major villain in One Piece, chronologically, arc by arc, starting here, in the East Blue, with a fishman who held the highest bounty in the entire sea. Which sounds impressive until you realize he picked the East Blue on purpose. He chose the weakest ocean so he could play God. Arlong is a sawshark fishman, and the main antagonist of the Arlong Park arc. He served under Fisher Tiger as part of the Sun Pirates, a crew born out of rebellion against the systemic enslavement of fishmen. After Tiger's death, Arlong was captured and thrown into Impel Down. He only got out because Jinbei became a warlord and used that leverage to secure his release. So what does Arlong do with his second chance? He sails to the weakest sea in the world and becomes the exact thing that oppressed his people. Here's where it gets dark. His entire operation in Kokoyazi village is built on extortion. Every resident pays tribute just to stay alive. And when Nami's foster mother, Belle-Mère, refuses to deny her daughter's existence to lower her payment, Arlong kills her, in front of her children. Not because she was a threat, because she chose to be a mother, instead of pretending her kids didn't exist. Then there's Nami. Arlong recognizes she's a genius cartographer, so he enslaves her as a child and forces her to draw sea charts for him, not as a crew member, as a resource. He tells her if she collects enough money, he'll free her village, which is, not ideal, considering he has zero intention of honoring that deal. He's weaponizing a child's hope to fuel his own conquest. But here's the thing that makes Arlong more than just a brute. His hatred of humans isn't irrational. Fishmen were enslaved, discriminated against, and treated as subhuman for generations. Arlong lived through that, and instead of breaking the cycle, he chose to flip it. He picked the East Blue specifically to make humans feel what his people felt. He's a victim who became a perpetrator, and that distinction is what elevates this arc from a simple rescue mission into something that still hits hard decades later. But if Arlong's scheme was about controlling one village, the next villain on this list tried to overthrow an entire kingdom, and he almost pulled it off. Crocodile? Arlong wanted to bully a village. Crocodile wanted to topple a kingdom, and not in a loud, dramatic, I'm gonna blow everything up kind of way. He did it quietly, over 16 years. While everyone in the country thought he was a hero, let me explain. Crocodile is the primary antagonist of the Alabasta arc, and he represents a massive scale jump in what a One Piece villain can be. He's a warlord of the sea, which means the world government essentially gave him a badge and said, do whatever you want. And what he wanted was to find the ancient weapon Pluton, a super weapon tied to the Void Century, one of the deepest and most dangerous mysteries in the entire series. Most characters at this point in the story don't even know that concept exists. Crocodile had been hunting it for over a decade. Here's where it gets interesting. He didn't just roll up to Arabasta and start demanding answers. He built an entire criminal organization called Baroque Works, operated under the codename Mr. Year-Zero, paired every agent with a numbered partner system, and ran the whole thing from the shadows while Nico Robin, going by Miss All Sunday, served as his right hand. Every agent had a specific role. Every operation had a purpose, and that purpose was to destroy the country from the inside out. Baroque Works conducted years of espionage, sabotage, targeted assassinations, and here's the wildest part, drought manipulation. They literally engineered water shortages to make citizens believe their own king was hoarding resources. The goal wasn't to conquer Arabasta by force. It was to make the people of Arabasta tear their own government apart. Crocodile wanted a civil war, and he got one, all while his public persona was that of a heroic protector who defended the kingdom against pirate threats. The guy was getting praised in the streets while his agents were poisoning the water supply, which is, not ideal. His villainy doesn't feel like a cartoon plot. It feels like a CIA operation, covert regime change, manufactured dissent, a puppet master who never has to get his hands dirty because the population does the work for him. By the time Luffy shows up, the country is already collapsing. Crocodile didn't break Arabasta. He convinced Arabasta to break itself. And the fact that all of this, every agent, every assassination, every fabricated drought, traces back to one man's obsession with a weapon from a forgotten era, that's what makes Crocodile terrifying. He's not just patient. He's playing a completely different game than everyone else in the room, and nobody even knows the game exists. But if you think a 16-year conspiracy is an extreme use of power, Wait until you meet the guy who declared himself God and actually had the lightning to back it up. Enel. Enel is a villain who calls himself God, gets punched in the face by a rubber boy, and then flies to the moon and literally becomes the ruler of a space city. I don't know what to tell you. That's the actual plot. Before the Straw Hats ever reached Skypiea, Enel had already been running the place for 6 years. He showed up from another sky island called Burka, overthrew the government, and installed himself as the tyrannical god of the entire island. And with his powers, the title wasn't even that ridiculous. His devil fruit, the Goro Goro no Mi, is a Logia type that lets him generate, control, and become lightning. Instant destruction, near light speed movement, and the ability to fry anyone who looks at him wrong. On top of that, he has Mantra, Scipio's version of observation hockey, letting him sense every person's location across the entire island at once. So he can hear you talking about him and vaporize you from across the sky, which is, not ideal. Nobody could touch him. Lightning combined with omniscient perception meant he functioned as an actual deity. His subjects couldn't fight back, and anyone who disobeyed got deleted. For 6 years, that was just how things worked. Then Luffy showed up. Here's the thing. Luffy's body is rubber. Enel hits him with enough voltage to level a city block, and Luffy just stands there like nothing happened. The look on Enel's face when he realizes his strongest attacks do absolutely zero damage is one of the most iconic moments in the entire series. A terrifying god-tier villain reduced to a guy who genuinely does not know what to do. His entire worldview collapses in real time. But here's where it gets weird. Enel loses, gets beaten, standard villain stuff. Except it's not. Because after the arc ends, Oda kept telling Enel's story through a cover story series called Enel's Great Space Operations, and it's one of the most underappreciated pieces of One Piece lore in the franchise. Enel pilots his flying ship, the Ark Maxim, all the way to the moon. He actually gets there. He fights off space pirates attacking small robot creatures called automata, then uses his lightning to activate an entire ancient city buried beneath the lunar surface. The automata wake up, the ruins come alive, and Enel effectively becomes the ruler of a moon civilization. A villain who declared himself God, got humbled by a teenager made of rubber, flew to space, and became the actual ruler of a city on the moon. His dream wasn't crushed, he just achieved it somewhere else. That almost never happens in shonen. Villains are supposed to lose everything. Enel lost a sky island and gained an entire moon. Fans have debated for years whether Enel will return, and those lunar ruins hint at connections to the Void Century that Oda clearly planted intentionally. The automata, the murals, the ancient technology, none of it has been fully explained. And Enel is just sitting up there, ruling over all of it, waiting. But as cosmic as Enel's story gets, the next villain brings things crashing back down to Earth. Because Rob Lucci doesn't need lightning or godhood. He just needs his fists and a government badge. Rob Lucci. Up until this point, every villain the Straw Hats have faced has been a pirate, a tyrant, or a self-proclaimed god. Rob Lucci is none of those things. He's a government employee, and that's exactly what makes him terrifying. Lucci is the main antagonist of the Enies Lobby arc, the first time the Straw Hats go to war against the world government itself. He's the strongest member of CP9, an elite Cypherpol unit that exists for one purpose, carrying out assassinations the government doesn't want anyone to know about. Here's what makes him different from every villain before him. Lucci doesn't want treasure, territory, or a crown. He kills people because the state told him to, and he genuinely believes that makes it righteous. Weakness is a crime. Surrendering is a crime. Existing in opposition to the government's will is punishable by death. He's not a selfish villain. He's a zealot for institutional violence, which is so much worse. And his backstory earns him the epithet massacre weapon for good reason. As a child soldier, Lucci was sent to a fortress where 500 soldiers were being held hostage. Those soldiers had surrendered to their captors rather than fight to the death. So Lucci massacred all 500 of them. Not the enemy, the soldiers. Because in his mind, choosing to live instead of dying for the government was a weakness so unforgivable that every single one deserved death. He was a child when he decided that, which is, not ideal. Before any of this is revealed, Lucci spends the entire Water 7 arc disguised as a shipwright, standing right next to the Straw Hats. The moment his cover drops, the tone of the series shifts. This isn't a pirate they can punch and sail away from. This is the machinery of the world turning against them. His fight with Luffy is a milestone. It introduces Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd, transformations Luffy literally invented because nothing else was enough to keep up with Lucci's Rokushiki martial arts and his Leopard Zoan Devil Fruit. The man fights like a predator, in every sense. Fast, precise, and completely indifferent to whether you live or die. Now, Lucci was not the leader of CP9. That was Spandam, and calling Spandam incompetent is being generous. But that contrast is the point. The world government doesn't need its leaders to be strong. It needs them to be obedient. Spandam gives the orders. Lucci carries them out. The system works not because the people running it are capable, but because the weapons they deploy are devastating. After Enies Lobby falls, Spandam blames CP9 for the disaster and has them dismissed. Lucci takes the fall for a mission botched by his own boss. But the government doesn't throw away a weapon like that forever. He resurfaces later as a member of CP0, the highest level intelligence agency in the world. Same ideology, higher clearance, even less accountability. Rob Lucci doesn't hate the Straw Hats. He doesn't have a personal vendetta. He's just doing his job. And that's the scariest sentence you can say about a man with a body count in the hundreds. But if Lucci represents the government's sharpest weapon, the next villain on our list represents what happens when a pirate breaks so completely that he stops trusting the living altogether. Gecko Moria. Most villains in One Piece want to conquer something. Gecko Moria just doesn't want to feel anything ever again. He's a former warlord of the sea, captain of the Thriller Bark Pirates, and the primary antagonist of the Thriller Bark arc. His entire deal is building an army of the dead because the living let him down in the worst possible way. Years before the Straw Hats encountered him, Moria sailed into the New World and did something unbelievably ambitious. He challenged Kaido, the same Kaido known as the strongest creature in the world. Every single member of his crew was wiped out. Moria walked away as the sole survivor. That kind of loss doesn't just change your strategy, it breaks something fundamental. His conclusion was simple. Living crewmates are fragile. They die. They leave you. So he stopped relying on them entirely. Enter the Kage no Mi. This devil fruit lets him steal people's shadows and implant them into corpses to create zombies. Sounds like standard horror stuff until you hear the rules. Anyone whose shadow gets stolen will literally disintegrate if they step into sunlight. Not get a sunburn, they die. Every person Moria robs becomes a prisoner of darkness, unable to exist in the daytime world ever again. And the corpses are reusable. If a shadow's original owner dies, Moria rips out a new person's shadow and shoves it into the same body. He's running an infinite recycling program for the dead, which is, not ideal. His base of operations is Thriller Bark itself, the largest ship in the entire One Piece world. So massive, it gets mistaken for an island. He's sailing through the Florian Triangle on a fog-covered nightmare vessel stuffed with zombies, stolen shadows, and gothic architecture. Tonally, the arc is a complete departure from everything before it. We went from the political thriller of Enies Lobby to a full-on haunted house episode. Here's where the thematic weight comes in. Moria's philosophy is a direct inversion of Luffy's. Luffy puts everything on the line because he believes his friends will come through. Moria watched that exact philosophy get everyone he loved killed and said never again. Instead of earning loyalty, he steals power. Instead of building bonds, he puppeteers corpses. Every zombie in his army is proof that he'd rather command the dead than risk losing the living. And the tragic part is, you can't even fully blame him. Kaido didn't just beat his crew, he erased them. Moria's grief is real, and his coping mechanism just happens to involve reanimating corpses on a nightmare island. Not the healthiest therapy session, but I don't know what to tell you. The problem is, his philosophy is also his downfall. By refusing to invest in living people, he stagnates. He gets lazy. By the time Luffy shows up, Moria is a fraction of the pirate he used to be. The guy who once challenged an emperor can barely handle a pre-time skip Straw Hat crew. A warlord who stopped growing the moment he stopped caring. But if Moria's trauma turned him into a gothic horror villain with commitment issues, the next warlord on our list channeled his pain into something far more dangerous. A kingdom built on puppet strings and smiling slaves. Don Quixote Doflamingo. Most villains in One Piece want something. Power, treasure, revenge, the usual. Doflamingo wants to watch the world burn, and he's got a better reason for it than almost anyone in the series. Here's the thing about Doflamingo. He was born a celestial dragon. That's the highest social class in the entire One Piece world. These are people who literally walk around with bubble helmets because they refuse to breathe the same air as commoners. They can enslave anyone, kill anyone, and the world government will look the other way. That was his birthright, and then his father gave it all up. Doflamingo's dad, Homing, decided the family should renounce their divine privileges and live among ordinary people. He genuinely believed they could integrate with commoners, which is, not ideal when your family name is synonymous with centuries of slavery and oppression. The commoners didn't see a humble family trying to start over. They saw celestial dragons, and they made that family pay for every crime their class had ever committed. As a child, Doflamingo was hunted, beaten, and brutalized. Meanwhile, the remaining celestial dragons in Maria Joie refused to take his family back. So here's a kid who's hated by the people below him and abandoned by the people above him. Both sides rejected him. and he decided both sides deserved to suffer for it. That's what makes him different. His hatred isn't aimed at one group, it's aimed at the entire structure of existence. He concluded the world was fundamentally corrupt, that kindness is a weakness, and that the only thing that matters is power. Not because he read it in a book, because he lived it. He forcibly took the throne of Dressrosa from King Riku, becoming both a pirate captain and a sitting monarch while somehow maintaining world government support. His frozen bounty sat at 340 million berries, but that number is laughably low for what he actually was. In the criminal underworld, he operated as the most influential broker under the codename Joker, coordinating the trade of weapons, smile fruits, and every kind of illicit goods you can imagine. He was directly supplying Kaido's army, a warlord, a king, and the biggest arms dealer in the underworld, all the same guy. And then there's his devil fruit. The Ito Ito no Mi lets him create and control strings. Sounds underwhelming until you realize what he does with it. He literally puppeteers people, attaching strings to individuals and forcing them to move against their will. He made King Riku's army slaughter its own citizens while Riku was fully conscious and unable to stop his own body. That's not just a power. That's a philosophy made physical. His desire to pull the strings of the world is both literal and metaphorical, and that's what elevates him above almost every antagonist before him. The iconic sunglasses, the flamingo coat, the distinctive laugh. He's got the charisma of a rock star and the moral compass of an arsonist. He doesn't just want to rule. He wants to prove that the world was always this ugly, and he's just the only one honest enough to admit it. A fallen god who became a devil. That's Doflamingo. But if you think a fallen celestial dragon with a god complex is terrifying, wait until you meet an actual emperor who steals your soul if you show fear at her tea party. Charlotte Linlin, Big Mom. Imagine walking into a kingdom where the trees say hello, the rivers are made of juice, and every piece of candy on the ground has a face and a personality. Sounds like a children's fever dream, right? Here's the thing, every single one of those cheerful, singing, living objects exists because somebody had their lifespan ripped out of their body. Welcome to Totoland. Charlotte Linlin, known as Big Mom, is the captain of the Big Mom Pirates and was formerly one of the 4 emperors, the only woman to ever hold that title. Her bounty sat at 4,188,000 berries, the second highest of any living pirate at the time. She's 68 years old, stands 8.8 meters tall, and has a blood type listed simply as X, because even her biology refuses to be normal. Her devil fruit, the Soru Soru no Mi, lets her steal the souls of living people and shove them into inanimate objects or animals, creating entities called homies. These homies are everywhere. The trees talk, the flowers gossip, the clouds have opinions. Her entire kingdom is alive, and it's all very cute until you remember that every single one of those things is powered by someone's stolen life force. Residents of Totoland are required to pay periodic soul taxes, literally surrendering portions of their remaining lifespan just to keep living there. Refuse, and she takes all of it, which is, not ideal. But here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Big Mom isn't lurking in the shadows like Crocodile. She's not brooding on a throne like Kaido. She's throwing tea parties. She's demanding wedding cakes. She's having hunger tantrums so violent they level entire city blocks, killing her own citizens because somebody didn't bake the right flavor of semla. The contrast between her childlike obsession with sweets and the absolute carnage she causes when she doesn't get them is what makes her so deeply uncomfortable to watch. She feels less like a pirate emperor and more like a natural disaster wearing a party hat. And then there's the mother angle. She brands herself as Big Mom. She has dozens of children. Dozens. You'd think that implies some level of maternal warmth, right? Turns out, no. She uses those children as political chess pieces, marrying them off to forge alliances, discarding them when they stop being useful, and occasionally trying to kill the ones who embarrass her. Her daughter Pudding was bred specifically for a scheme. Her son Katakuri spent his entire life hiding his real face to maintain an image that served her empire. Family, in Big Mom's world, is just another resource to exploit. That's the real horror of Charlotte Linlin. She's not hiding what she is behind some grand ideology or tragic backstory about justice. She's a smiling, cake-eating, party-throwing emperor who has built an entire nation on stolen souls and calls it paradise. The cheerful facade doesn't conceal the cruelty. It is the cruelty. Every singing tree is a reminder that someone, somewhere, lost years of their life so that Big Mom's kingdom could feel whimsical. She embodies the fusion of indulgence and exploitation, a nurturing image wrapped around predatory control. And she does it all while asking if you'd like another slice of cake. But if you think a candy kingdom built on stolen souls is as dark as the emperors get, wait until you meet the one who turned an entire country into a weapons factory while actively trying to die. Kaido. The strongest creature in the world has a hobby, and it's trying to kill himself. That's not a joke. That's his actual introduction. Kaido jumps off a sky island, falls tens of thousands of feet, slams into the ground headfirst, and walks away with a headache. Not a scratch, not a broken bone, a headache. Which is, not ideal when your entire goal was to stop existing. Here's the thing about Kaido. Most shonen villains want to live forever. They want immortality, infinite power, the ability to rule until the heat death of the universe. Kaido wants the opposite. He wants to die, but not just any death. He wants a death so legendary that people sing about it for centuries. He watched Gol D. Roger walk to his own execution with a smile and thought, yeah, that's the dream. He saw Whitebeard die standing up at Marineford and felt genuine envy. Not for their power, for their exits. And that's the paradox that makes him fascinating. He's so absurdly durable that the world literally cannot kill him. He's been captured by the Marines and enemy pirates dozens of times. They've tried to execute him. They've tortured him. Nothing works. The man is basically allergic to dying. So he starts trying to do it himself, leaping from sky islands, picking fights he doesn't need to pick, drinking himself into oblivion every single night. None of it sticks. But instead of waiting for death to figure out how to reach him, Kaido decides to build the war that will finally produce someone strong enough to finish the job. He allies with Shogun Kurozumi Orochi and turns Wano into a weapons factory. The rivers get poisoned. The forests die. The people starve while churning out arms and smile fruits for the beast's pirates. And here's what makes it genuinely tragic. Kaido doesn't even want Wano. He doesn't care about ruling it. He needs it as a staging ground for the war he believes will finally kill him. The Wano Country arc is structured like a kabuki play, split into 3 officially defined acts. That's almost poetic for a villain who sees his own death as the final act of a grand performance. Every piece of suffering he inflicts is just set dressing for the climax he's been chasing his entire life. Then there's the dragon. Kaido ate a mythical zone devil fruit that lets him transform into a massive eastern dragon. Flight, fire breath, wind blades, lightning, the full package. When he's in that form hovering above Wano in the clouds, he doesn't look like a pirate. He looks like a natural disaster with opinions. But strip away the scales and the Sky Island suicide attempts and the Emperor title, and what you're left with is a guy who achieved everything and found it completely empty. He built the strongest crew, he conquered a nation, he collected the most powerful Zoan users in the world. And none of it means anything to him because the one thing he actually wants, a death worthy of legend, keeps slipping through his fingers. That's what separates Kaido from every other powerhouse villain. Doflamingo wanted control. Big Mom wanted family, in her own horrifying way. Kaido wants an ending. He wants someone to prove that even the strongest creature alive can fall. Power without purpose, compressed into a dragon the size of a city block who just wants someone to put him down. But if Kaido represents strength searching for meaning in death, the next villain found meaning in something far more dangerous: patience. Marshall D. Teach, Blackbeard. Every villain on this list has owned their arc. They showed up, caused problems, and got dealt with. Marshall D. Teach doesn't work like that. Blackbeard has been lurking in the background of this entire series, showing up at exactly the right moment, taking exactly what he needs, and disappearing before anyone can stop him. He is the longest-running threat in One Piece, and there's a very real chance he reaches the One Piece before Luffy does. Here's the thing about Blackbeard. When we first meet him in Jaya, he's a nobody. Just some weird guy eating cherry pies and giving Luffy a speech about how dreams never die. It's genuinely beautiful. He talks about the romance of the sea, the freedom of piracy, the idea that a man's dream will never end. It's the kind of thing you'd expect Luffy to say. And that's exactly the problem, because this same man then goes on to commit every single taboo in the pirate world. He murders a crewmate aboard Whitebeard's ship to steal the Yami Yami no Mi, a darkness logia that can nullify other devil fruit powers. He hunts down Portgas D. Ace and hands him over to the world government to secure a warlord title, which directly triggers the Paramount War at Marineford. Thousands of people die because Blackbeard needed a stepping stone, and then he does the impossible. During the chaos of Marineford, with Whitebeard's body still warm on the ground, Blackbeard steals the Gura Gura no Mi directly from the corpse. He now wields 2 devil fruits simultaneously. Nobody in the history of One Piece has ever done this. The established rule is, eat a second devil fruit and you die. Blackbeard just didn't. The series has hinted that there's something strange about his body, but over 1,000 chapters in, we still don't have a definitive answer, which is, not ideal. The 3 skulls on his Jolly Roger have fueled theories for years. Multiple souls sharing one body, a Cerberus connection, none of it confirmed. All of it terrifying if true. But what makes Blackbeard genuinely dangerous is that he's Luffy's exact opposite, walking the exact same path. Both carry the initial D. Both want to be Pirate King. Both build crews of misfits and outcasts. But where Luffy earns loyalty through trust, Blackbeard recruits from Impel Down's worst inmates. Where Luffy fights head-on, Blackbeard waits in the shadows. Where Luffy would die before betraying a friend, Blackbeard killed his own crewmate in his sleep for a piece of fruit. He's not a mindless brute, he's patient, he's strategic, and he genuinely believes in the same dream Luffy does. That Jaya speech wasn't a lie. Blackbeard loves piracy. He loves the idea of freedom and the open sea. He just has zero moral boundaries on how he gets there. And that combination, genuine belief plus total willingness to betray, cheat, and steal, makes him the most unpredictable villain in the entire series. Every other emperor earned their seat through raw power or inherited legacy. Blackbeard schemed his way there from nothing. He went from an anonymous crew member who spent decades hiding his ambitions to a man who controls Whitebeard's former territories, commands a crew of the most dangerous criminals alive, and holds two of the most destructive devil fruits in existence. All of it calculated. All of it timed, perfectly. The series hasn't told us exactly what Blackbeard is, whether his body houses multiple entities, whether the Yami Yami no Mi lets him absorb devil fruits indefinitely, whether he's something else entirely. What we do know is that he represents the ultimate test of everything Luffy believes in. Same dream, same ambition, opposite soul. And when those two finally collide for the last time, it won't just decide who becomes Pirate King, it'll decide what kind of era comes next. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.